Unfortunately, Adam had to take off. He had to go do a show, but he and I both been driving this car. Our Adam Carolla replacement is Dan. Dan's the creative director of Turn 10 Studios. You guys make the Forza Motorsport video games.
That's right. So we make Forza Motorsport, Forza Horizon. It's all about simulation, and cars like this are the bread and butter of games like that.
We were in the studio talking about the game, checking out some of the gameplay on it. It looks awesome, and I imagine this car is in one of the games.
It is. This is in Forza Motorsport 4.
Have you driven the car for real?
I have not driven the coupe version. I've only driven the four-door version.
Okay.
A friend of mine, who's actually a Turn 10 the content director, just bought the four-door version, and he's been tearing up our parking lots with that big-ass engine.
I guess when you sell 10 million games, you can go out and you can buy cars like this.
Well, there's a little bit of car passion in our group, so we'll sacrifice a little bit to be able to afford the cars.
So Adam and I were talking a little bit about it on the podcast. So if you're watching the video, go back, check out the podcast as well. Get Adam's take on the car. The car for me has been fun. First of all, I love the idea of a luxury, I don't know, supercar, luxury, high-end kind of muscly car from an American car maker, right? So we have the Audi S6 now and the M5, which are great cars, but this thing is nuts. This thing is, I'm sure people watching know the specs on the car. It's 556 horsepower. It's from GM's LSA engine, which is the same engine that's in the new Camaro ZL1, but with that car, I think there's a little bit different routing of the exhaust and maybe some tuning, and it gets 580 horsepower. Yeah. This is 556. When the four-door came out, it was like the fastest production sedan in the world around the Nürburgring, broke 8 minutes.
Nice suspension too, I mean, for a car of this size.
It's got to be a great car to drive as well in the game.
Yeah.
What I like about it is we've driven so many cars out here, and they all have these different sort of modes to them, sport mode and all that stuff. This doesn't have it. The magnetic ride suspension in this car, it's smooth no matter what. Like you don't have to change the suspension. On the freeway it's smooth, and around the turns it adjusts on the fly, which is really kind of neat.
Nice.
I wish it had a 6-speed manual. They offer it in a 6-speed manual, but this one has the automatic. The automatic's fine. It's just, I think it would have been more fun with it. Now the lines of the car, I mean, what do you think?
Well, it really does carry that Cadillac, that new rebooted heritage for Cadillac. They're starting with, all the facets that go back. It makes it look fast, but, it's a really big car.
It is a big car.
It's a big, big car. And I actually think the lines do a good job of kind of, from a distance, it looks proportional. It's nice, and I think the lines help.
Definitely some hard edges. I think people are going to talk a little bit about the back. Like if you see the car on the road, it's kind of a love or hate thing, but I guess that's kind of what they were going for.
Yeah.
The center exhaust is kind of cool, and I like the idea if you can get the CTS-V in a coupe, a sedan, or a wagon, and you can get all three of them with a 6-speed manual. Our friend Amir Rosenbaum from Spectre Performance, I did a Spectre 341 challenge last year, and he has a wagon with a 6-speed, and he's just been stripping it down, taking all the weight out. The seats are out, everything's out of the car. And he's fanatical. He's like, the manual weighs 2 pounds, out the door. And they were racing that car up there. It was pretty nuts. So
he's doing it the hard way, though. I mean, this car is heavy.
Not a whole lot to see. They cover everything with.
They all look like this, right?
They just cover everything with plastic.
Yeah.
To know a little bit about the engine, the LSA engine, it has a twin screw supercharger on top of the engine. It's basically flipped upside down, so the supercharger is low, the intercooler is on top. So here would be a pulley, and the throttle body comes in over here. And I think it's an Eaton TVS 1900. The 2300 is a little bit larger, and that's what you'd see on a ZR1 Corvette or the new GT500, the new Shelby GT500. This is a little bit smaller, but in the tuning aftermarket, guys like Lingenfelter and stuff are getting 700, 750 horsepower out of these things. As it sits, this car will do 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. I mean, given the right conditions. Do you get this over a new Camaro? Do you get it over a Corvette? I mean, do you get it over a Mercedes or not? This car is...
For me, this is over a Mercedes all day, right?
Yeah.
Because you can get the manual.
You can get the manual.
And I miss the manual.
I do. I kind of feel like I got to buy them all now, because in a few years you're not going to have them.
Collect
like,
them
what am I
all.
going to do? It's like, you got to collect them all. So this car is like 72,000, I think 72 and change as it sits with a few options. But I think you can get into like the 6-speed manual version for around 65. My two biggest gripes on this car are it eats a shitload of gas, especially when you have cars like a GT500 that don't have the gas guzzler tax. They gear those cars up to get that 22 miles per gallon. I think an SLS Mercedes is like specifically geared to get that 22 mile. But there's
really?
definitely some supercars that are in that range to avoid the gas guzzler tax. And this one gets 18 miles a gallon on the freeway. So it will eat some gas.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's got so much power and it's so much fun to drive, it doesn't make any noise. And you got the cool center exhaust. It's not loud enough while you're driving it. I mean, the aftermarket, no problem. Somebody can swap the exhaust on it. And you're kind of like, well, it is a Cadillac, so maybe it's supposed to be quiet. So this is kind of weird too, right? So they're undecided. Do I go with push button start or do I go with key? So they gave us the key fob.
Yeah.
There's no push button, but the key is sort of in there and it's permanently there. So it's like you just turn this switch.
So they don't have like the start.
There's no start button and the key doesn't come out. They're like, I'm kind of on the fence. You're like, maybe you get a push button, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
And key fob is kind of huge if that's the way it's going to be, but you know, it is what it is. All right, so you get in there and turn the weird key and fire it up. I like that it's, you know, it's the double stitch, even though this is not really leather, it's some sort of weird rubber,
good in the California
but it gives
sun.
it that feel. And the Recaro seats are amazing.
The Alcantara wheel is nice.
The Alcantara steering wheel, one of my favorite parts. Adam and I were talking about this on the ride home from the airport for like 30 minutes. The screen comes up when you fire it up. The screen comes up.
Nice
It's kind of weird. Like it's kind of cool, but it also seems like an afterthought. Like, oh, we need a screen, and we didn't put it in there. It does have a boost gauge. I like the idea of a boost gauge with the supercharger.
Yeah.
It's been fun to drive. Like taking it around the canyons. It sticks, man. It just really sticks.
Though there was that true question. You know, Adam was asking, what do you do when you're in it? Do you acknowledge you're a Cadillac driver or not?
Yeah.
I think I would. I think it's, you know, again, I choose this over the Mercedes.
Yeah, you know, Adam's a little snobby though. He's like, oh, I don't want to be in a flashy car, so I'll just get an Audi. You know, he's kind of that guy. Okay. But I think he likes the car a lot. All right, so give it a couple revs. We'll check out this exhaust.
They've got a limiter on it.
Yeah.
It won't actually let me really rev it up. I don't know if it's because it's cold or if
it could be not the temp. Who knows? Cars are so smart these days.
How'd it sound?
You know, it just needs to be louder. I mean, it's got a nice tone to it. It just needs to be louder.
Right.
I mean, I would just, like, that would be the whole idea is like, if it's a Cadillac, just make it fucking balls out loud. Just put some crazy exhaust on it and just make this thing scream every time you drive it. That would be fun. All right, you can shut it down. So, Dan, the new game, Forza Horizon.
Yeah.
And this one's a little different. It's out on the streets. All the other games are kind of on the tracks.
Yeah.
When's the game come out?
So Forza Horizon will be coming to players on the Xbox 360 on October 23rd.
Excellent. And in the meantime, we can check out your website for some videos, screenshots, stuff like that.
Absolutely. ForzaMotorsport.net or ForzaHorizon.net. Both have a ton of content for people to browse.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.